You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Coming in hot, ready for another fun-filled week. As always, your favorite time of the week, live every single Tuesday night right here on all your favorite social media accounts. We appreciate all the love and support. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host.
I didn't wash my hands.
Oh, no. Vanilla steam is dirty steam.
Dirty steam!
And
what if I told you I also didn't wash my hands?
oh, my gosh. And he didn't even go to the bathroom.
I did. Before Sean.
Ew.
I touched everything.
Ugh. Y'all
Everything.
did just open those beers.
No, I didn't. You did.
Yeah, you did.
That's
you opened
true.
them for us.
It was Providence. It was like we knew y'all's
What if
hands
I told
was
you
dirty.
I'm like Michael Shannon in shape of fish penis, where I wash my hands before using the bathroom?
That's so weird.
Why
would
people
you
do that? Like people do that.
No,
it's like I don't.
I heard a story once too that Howard Stern, he doesn't like to bathe and then poop. He'll poop and then right after he's done pooping, if he just took a shower, he'll jump back in. He feels dirty after he poops.
I mean, I get that, but
that's why you get a bidet.
Yeah,
a bidet just washes your
just does
butt.
that.
Yeah.
Before the bidet, though, if it was like if there was a diarrhea attack or something like that,
right,
I might rinse off
diarrhea.
Like if it was real bad. But
yeah,
no.
I mean I was gonna say no, I agree. If it was like an explosion, then, yeah. But even still, I'm like, a bidet is just. I'm so glad to have one back.
It is funny because I did dive into like a rabbit hole of looking up why like some people like wash their hands before using the bathroom, and to them apparently.
I guess it makes
I
sense.
want to say it makes sense to a degree.
Penis has been.
Well, that's the thing. Is like they're not concerned about spreading germs to everyone else.
They don't want to get germs.
Well,
on
the mindset is like if you wash your hands before you eat, if you're washing your hands before you do certain things, then you shouldn't have germs on you anyway. So you wash your hands before you touch your junk.
I don't want to put germs on my junk.
Yeah, they don't want to put germs on their junk. Now, as far as them touching things afterwards, if you're not washing your hands before doing stuff, that's your problem, not theirs.
True.
That's their mindset.
Don't want those junk germs.
Germy junk.
Now, here's the funny thing. I've heard the best way to get around that is to you put a mask on your penis.
Can you do that?
Yeah, and it
A
keeps
penile
mask
mask?
up.
a penile mask. Yep, mask.
I didn't know they made those.
It's a junk mask.
Junk mask.
It's what used to be a
Isn't that a
jock strap.
condom?
No. That again, that protects other people, not you. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, no, you're right. Wasn't that what masks do?
I guess it protects both.
A little bit. I mean, there are some sexually transmitted. This is not the conversation I think we were going to start.
I don't know why we went down.
Because we
this
didn't talk
road.
about washing hands.
Yep.
I'll just be we've had podcasts that started off
Worse.
rockier than this.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
yeah.
So
way
it's
worse.
true.
Way
Yeah.
worse.
But that's what you're going to get every single week. That's why
right.
you tune in. You
That's
never
right.
know. You never know what you're going to get.
You
It's
never
like
know.
a box of chocolates.
The Commanders brought Sean back from Florida. So
Yeah, how was your time? How was the vacay?
It was very nice.
The
Very
beach.
as refreshing as can be with two children. But the most relaxing vacations are, when you leave your kids with someone else and then you go on vacation. But it was still good. Had a good time.
Did they have a good time?
Everybody had a good time.
That's good. That's good.
It's always good
we're
when
glad to have you
everybody
back.
has
We
a
kind of
good
missed you
time.
on our convo last week. We were talking about Netflix and
Oh, yeah.
how they're greedy bastards.
Yeah.
We definitely
we did
did
trash. We did trash Netflix a bit.
My
Entire show about
mom
that.
and stepdad already quit using mine and just went ahead and subscribed to their own.
Yep.
And
That's
I
what
think,
they wanted.
I think my dad's going to do the same thing. And of course they
And that
they
makes
went with the
Netflix
15.
win.
Yeah, they went with the $15 a month
There it is.
thing. So
Well, you almost have to go with $15 a month if you want to, because that's
be
the only one that
comparable.
offers at least 2 streams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's we already went through all this last week, but you could tell Netflix designed this purely for their own gain, and they didn't care about anyone else.
They've already gained enough off Sean's family, but I'm happy to say it's not confirmed yet, but I believe that for the most part, my family is canceled.
Oh, your whole family?
I don't know about some. My mom and dad may keep
This is the thing, even if they
the
can't-
$15, but I
Yeah.
don't think Chip and Wendy or Amber and Jeff both
Nice.
are going to subscribe.
Nice.
I don't know yet.
If none of you all subscribe, that means they don't gain any money off you all. They'll still have the money from
Because your parents
but-
have the main account.
They
right?
do.
Yeah,
They do. And look, I think it was preliminary as far as, well, on, I think, TV devices, it's pretty much started because now that my parents, I helped them set it up, went over there, claimed their house as the main household.
Yeah.
And my sister confirmed that they can no longer watch on any devices at their house.
I haven't had that happen. to me
However, they weren't using like iPad or iPhones. On my iPhone, I haven't tried the iPad yet. I can still access the account.
yet. Netflix
and
hasn't
stream.
explained it at all yet, but it does say on their website that you can use it anywhere on your mobile devices. So I'm like, so are you not like? Are those the only ones that are exempt from this whole thing? Because that's
I
stupid.
watched
And here's the thing.
on my phone while I was in Florida
Yeah.
just a couple of times, and
Never-
nothing ever popped up asking me.
Well, that's the
anything.
thing. Like ever since that one day that it asked us to confirm a household, which we haven't confirmed a household, it still hasn't asked to do that yet.
I'm
And it's
wondering if-
letting us use because I've used Netflix the other day to watch Supernatural.
And
yesterday.
they may not have all of the kinks worked out, but I'm guessing that as long as a mobile device checks in with the main house Wi-Fi within like a week or 2 weeks or something, they may not inhibit that device from watching
Yeah, I
Netflix.
mean, we don't
but I
really
don't know.
know, yeah.
Again, this is all kind of incognito and behind closed. I mean, that's. Again, this was a terrible rollout. Go listen to last week's show because we aired all of our grievances.
Yeah.
All of our grievances.
we got a good
one
show
thing
this week too.
that didn't happen until after the show last week, which kind of goes into this because if you don't have Netflix and you're trying to get some of these new movies and new shows, there's not so legal avenues to do
yeah.
that.
We
and one of
discussed
the
that,
biggest sites that we've used before until we started getting screeners directly from the studios.
That's right.
We were, using illegal means, and that website has been shut down abruptly. And,
RGB.
I never use illegal means.
and there's
never,
nothing,
never,
alternative right now. So it's kind of a big hit to the whole torrenting thing.
Yeah, it's what because like you said, the great thing about that one was now if you
I've
want,
already named it. I just name dropped it, so
What?
we get RGB.
Yeah,
just
well,
saying,
I'm
we
not
can throw it out
dancing
there.
around it. I was just
Okay.
referencing to it. Like that wasn't me trying to dance around it.
I just want to throw it out there for people who are wondering which
Well, it's
service.
it's gone now
dropped.
anyways.
Yeah.
So, but the great thing about that one, like you said, that is a pain now is that every new release, like when the digital releases were coming close, and anytime there was a torrent that was coming out, like you could see the new ones right on the front page. And every other one you have to search for stuff. So if you don't know what's coming out or what might be releasing soon or what, like it's just a lot harder to be like, okay, well, this released a month ago. Maybe there's a torrent of it out, and I got to go search for it.
Well,
like,
I also want to clarify too. It was funny because right after that news dropped, doing a little bit of digging on it, I think Keith, you had sent to our group text the reason why has nothing to do with like being
they
cracked
didn't crack
down from
a
the
lot.
government
Yeah,
or anything
they're
like
over
that.
in Europe where it's a lot easier to do that. They ran out of money and employees.
Well,
Several of them died
Inflation.
during COVID. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's like I've never seen anything posted like that
The
before.
cost of when I read an article about it, and it was talking about the cost of server space and
It was just energy
and all kinds. Yeah, it
Well,
was-
consumption.
yeah, and all that made sense to me. I'd never before had seen like a website that was just like several of our employees died from COVID, and I was like, what?
yeah,
yeah.
It's like so we don't
yeah.
so we don't have enough people to run it. I'm like, whoa.
They said they've been dealing with it for 2 years.
Yep. So I mean,
that's crazy.
I mean, look, this is what Netflix wants. We know they probably inserted the COVID into their office.
Yeah.
Man,
I'll send
It's
you
like
the
they're
link.
trying to
Someone
get
on
them from all over
Reddit
the
had
place.
a clone thing where they had the links. It's like it's
That
a
was
very
a joke, by the way. Netflix.
well, it's a very
joke.
small file because the file is nothing but torrent links. But like you can download it. He posted it on Reddit, and while it's still active until everything's fully shut down, you can still download like the torrents from RARBG. So
really?
I'll have to send you the link. But basically, you just find the torrent link and click on it, and like it's like an 800 megabyte file because all it is just
Yeah.
the torrents.
All of this to say, get a VPN.
Yeah.
You definitely want one of those if you're going to mess around with anything
Yeah.
nefarious on the web.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I have multiple
Works for
streaming
me.
services because it's easier. It's more And I would go that route, but now that everybody wants to keep like charging more and more money, and we'll get into that later with headlines too and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, that's what happens. That's what always happens. We discussed it last week. You give someone a cheap and easy option, they'll use it. And then when you start hiking up the prices and making it more difficult, they turn to other means. And it's,
I mean, and again, it's not necessarily we're
not advocating.
We're not advocating for it. It's just
it's just a fact of life.
It's what happens when hurdles are introduced and you put the barrier of entry so high.
What's the same thing as bootlegging during Prohibition? You made liquor hard to get and illegal, and people were like, nah.
But the people wanted it.
We want it.
Go make it in the woods. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. Well, time to move on to the rest of the show. We've got a great review.
Yeah.
The big movie on the block this past week was Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's a blockbuster.
Across the Spider-Verse. It pretty much trounced Little Mermaid. Yeah. I don't think there was any question.
It trounced a lot of things this year, to be fair.
True.
I mean, like, it is the most, so far, as far as like comic book film, it's trounced all of them.
Now, as far as animated, it hasn't beat Mario, or it hasn't.
No, actually,
it didn't
Mario
do as well
surpassed, even though it's out on home video already, it surpassed Frozen. As far as in box office numbers.
Yeah, it hasn't beaten, I think, Mario on the box office yet, or I don't know if it even will, but I mean, it's probably number 2.
It's nowhere near approaching it. It's only been out a week.
It's only been out a week, but I'm just saying, as far as, we'll have to see how that goes, if it'll...
It's like 120 million opening
weekend, yeah.
Whew. I mean, but and then, of course,
that was
Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid's opening weekend, and it had a 4-day weekend.
Yes.
It's like, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Memorial Day. Yeah, Monday, and Spider-Man...
And it
Across
dropped
the Spider-Verse still did better.
40 million in the box office. It is a certified flop at this point. It will not make its money back based on all the marketing they dumped into that movie. The overseas competition it's not doing well in China.
Its strongest push was opening weekend, because I see people still defending it. It's like, well, it had the highest opening memorial, 5th highest opening memorial weekend.
They're saying it's going to have to make $800 million to break even.
It's not going to make that.
Yeah,
it's not.
I think they expected, because I was talking to Brandon about this too. The last few of their Renaissance, the big Renaissance Disney remakes, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and there was one more, Lion King. Those all broke $1 billion, but they also dwindling as far as quality. And I think they thought Little Mermaid would break $1 billion like those, because it started the Disney Renaissance. But I think people are now at the point where they're tired of the remakes. And
that, but also, and without going into too much, I was going to say, just it being woke Disney. And I mean, I'm sorry, but we've had a whole year of controversy surrounding Disney, and even the ouster of Chapek. It's like you've got to think. It's like they're losing their minds over there trying to hold it together. And I'm sorry, but Disney partnering with Apple for Vision Pro ain't going to help it. We'll get into Vision Pro. We'll talk about that.
We'll get into some other things for sure. So,
but let's dive into our review. Here is our review of none other than Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
It's been a packed year already, full of major releases, with plenty more on the way. Now, Sony has conquered the box office this weekend with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the hotly anticipated sequel to Into the Spider-Verse. A year after the events of the first film, Miles Morales is settling into his role as Spider-Man. The film dives into the backstory of Gwen Stacy's origin as Spider-Woman and introduces a society of alternate Spider people led by Miguel O'Hara of the Spider-Man 2099 comics. Miguel leads the Spider Society in repairing disturbances in the multiverse, as the events of the last film has left holes through which villains have been popping up in alternate universes. When a new villain, the Spot, emerges, a seemingly benign threat, his abilities and connection to Miles and Miles' origin reveal a secret threat to the multiverse and those Miles loves. Across the Spider-Verse is definitely the best comic book film made this year, and arguably better than any of the MCU's last few phases. After the success of Into the Spider-Verse, and with the excitement and nostalgia of the Sony and Disney jointly made No Way Home, Sony has leaned hard into the shared Spider-Verse, with nods, Easter eggs, and homages to every era of Spider-Man across multiple forms of media. What's best about this film, however, isn't just the ode to the history of the character, but much like the first, this Spider-Man film has good emotion, character depth, and themes of responsibility, family, and sacrifice that make up the crux of what makes every iteration of Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Handling the multiverse concept better so far than anything from the MCU's multiverse saga, there is rarely anything that feels like it was just pulled out of nowhere for the sake of doing it. With art style and animation outdoing the first film, we are treated to varying styles representing different universes and characters. Most of these things are just a continued success of what the first film already did brilliantly. It's hard to complain about anything technically in the film, with my only gripe being on a few occasions there was too much going on screen with ever-changing art styles, happening during fast over-action scenes, or worse, one instance of an emotional moment between Gwen and her father, where I found myself distracted by the changing colors of the art style instead of being drawn to what Gwen was saying. This, however, leads me to another weaker point of the film. While doing too much with the visuals during a subtle and important scene can be a bad move and distracting, I admit I actually really liked the shifting color during the scene as it attempted to highlight the mood. It could have honestly added rather than distract if the writing had been stronger. It's not that the writing in Across the Spider-Verse is terrible, but it doesn't quite reach the emotional depth of the first, and sadly the art style became more fascinating than Gwen's message, though it's not just her scene that suffers from dull dialogue. With so much ground to cover leading into next year's Beyond the Spider-Verse, the film does a solid job of introducing the current plot, new characters, and new concepts of the Spider-Verse. There are times explanations are glossed over, though I do think the film attempts to explain as much as it can. It's rare that I want a film to shorten up emotional scenes and draw out the exposition, but Across the Spider-Verse is the film that could have used this. Though I'm glad the film does at least have emotional scenes, as it's one of the only comic films recently to feel like there are important things at stake if the hero fails. Where the emotion and themes seem to be felt most is in the writing, as it often feels the writers are trying to walk two lines. One that follows faithfully from universal themes made in the original, and one that updates the idea of family and responsibility for the current political climate. Never committing fully to traditional ideas of what makes Spider-Man often creates weaker moments in this film than what was on display in the first. Across the Spider-Verse succeeds in carrying on what Into the Spider-Verse started, and is still amongst the best Spider-Man films made. It builds upon what its predecessor did, and its only downfall is in its ambition to be bigger and grander. It's not as well polished as the first. Still, it's a fantastic film that promises big things from the finale. I give Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse 3 out of 4 stars.
There you have it. 3 out of 4 stars.
Wow.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We were kind of talking about it a little bit.
We did talk about it during the review.
So I like the first one better.
Yeah.
This one's not bad by any means.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little bit, and it's funny because I think we all, Sean, you saw it after you got back from Florida.
But
Keith
we all
and I,
have landed on the same gripes. So,
right.
Yeah.
But Keith and I went and saw it together, but we all had the same kind of feeling. And it was actually, there's two things from the production standpoint that kind of stand out to me as far as not negatives, but also not nitpicks. They're just, they are gripes. It's very spastic and energetic, and there's a lot of times where I'm just like, the shifting of the art style is cool from a visual perspective, but also from a narrative perspective, you can get very lost in it.
They upped
and
the
then
game,
also, there was also times where, and I don't want to blame this on AMC specifically, because I saw an article from IGN about a day before the release, and they just said that some people were having a hard time hearing some of the dialogue.
Mixing,
and I thought the mixing, I agree with some of the music or even some of the action scenes where people were trying to carry on conversations. While it wasn't terrible, but there were times where I was straining to try to hear it. It almost was like a Nolan film where I'm like, what are they saying?
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, I saw it at Preston, and I thought the sound and picture were fantastic, but
better than AMC.
There were
so it could be
there were moments, especially when him and Gwen get together, when she comes back and they're swinging and talking. And when they're going through the cityscape and all the the horns honking and the
visuals along with it.
Yeah, you can barely hear their conversation while they're kind of swinging
There's
around.
definitely, I think, a thing of, it's not that I hate all the new visuals, because they definitely went higher than the first one. It's just that I think they didn't strike the right balance. Like, I enjoyed some of the new visuals. I like that different multiverses had different artistic styles.
Yeah,
that was cool, and I enjoyed different aspects of it. But then when you would get to fight scenes that where the art style is constantly changing while there's 400 characters all flying at each other. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the review the scene with Gwen and her dad, which is supposed to be an emotional scene. I liked that the colors changed because it kind of mimicked the mood.
Yeah.
But then I got to a point where I was paying more attention to the shifting colors than what she was saying. And I was like, wait a minute.
That happened in more than one scene than just with her and her dad. There's scenes where the colors are muted. And then all of a sudden they pop vivid colors, and it's whoa, what?
And artistically, as a way to convey the mood, I'm like, that mood, that's cool, but you have to do it in the right balance to where you're not distracted.
Well, and I like what you said in the review as well. And this was my one other gripe beside the production, just a few nitpicks there. But also, it seemed like they were making up for the mood they were trying to sell with the lack of good writing.
The writing wasn't as strong.
And I felt like some of the writing was not nearly as... I watched the 2018 version, or the first movie, right before I went and saw this one, the day before. And so, to me, that one just had a much more personalized story between... Miles and his father, and
his uncle,
his uncle, and the responsibility of what Spider-Man means. I mean,
Peter Parker struggling with this idea.
Oh,
of, I'm afraid to bring a child into with me being a superhero.
Yes,
so,
and just the arcs that you see in the first movie that are taken with those characters are done so well. The story hits home. I mean, there were definitely tearjerker moments. I teared up a few times. The scene where the dad goes to visit him. At college, and he's tied up in the chair.
Yeah.
And his dad just thinks he's ignoring him because he's upset.
Yeah.
And is talking to him through the door. I was like, that was gripping.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah.
And there just was. They tried to do it in this one with his mom, and it wasn't bad, but the whole scene, and part of it I think was because they did it in the trailer.
Yeah.
They showed too much of that scene in the trailer.
I agree.
Oh, where they're like by the water tower thing?
Yes.
Before, and she's kind of saying, hey, I need you to promise me, you're always going to be my little boy, and you're going to, which in part of that too, I thought, I liked some of the pull that they showed with, hey, you got to grow up and let me be my own man.
Yes.
I like that evolution of his character, of him growing up into a young man. But there were still them tying that in with a deeper, tie with Gwen's story. There were just a lot of elements going on. You throw in Miguel into the mix.
His story, and it's like he has a little bit of a tragic background, but they kind of gloss over it because there's too many. Like, you can't go over all of their stories. And granted, every Spider-Man has a tragic background. That's part of what makes us them Spider-Man. And I like that they address that in this movie. I love that they're like, there's certain things that are key to what
that are
makes
canon.
Spider.
To what they talk about the canon.
But that was also part of my problem to get into a little bit, to go from writing into another little problem I had, was the fact that they want to address these themes of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man and have these emotional moments that I feel like some of the emotional moments were drawn out a little bit too long, whereas the first one had very more. They weren't dumb. They were simple, but not simplistic. Where just like Spider-Ham with the mallet, and he gives it to Miles, and he's like, you can't save everybody. And it's a very emotional scene, but it's also very short because you didn't need a lot there.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other part of the writing that really bothered me, that I think why some of the emotion didn't land home, was it felt like they were always constantly walking. I mentioned in the review this fine line of, well, we want to have these traditional values of family and the father figure being important, responsibility, and all these things that are a part of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. Yeah. But at the same time, some of these things don't mesh with the current culture climate, and it's like, well, we don't want to promote these certain things too much because that's no longer, though those things are racist or bigoted now. So it's kind of like this ground where they didn't go all the way in on things like the scene with his dad in the first one, because it's like, well, if we tread too hard in that direction, it might be like we're supporting things that we don't want to say we're supporting. And I'm not saying that was the case, because those are unsaid things, but I just felt like the film just felt like it never went all in on certain things because
I felt like, and where it tried to, especially with Gwen and her father's character.
Oh, there was a moment there,
there really was that I felt like, but I felt it fell flat. It didn't hit home the way I thought scenes in the first movie with Miles and his father hit.
I thought you were talking about the jacket scene that I felt like was on that line of dialogue. I did read, I told you, Haley Steinfeld, who voices Gwen, there were parts of the script she actually changed. She told them, I think she would say it like this. And it's things like that I'm like, with knowing kind of her mindset, I wonder if what was written may have actually been better, but because that's not how a current young woman would think that she, because there was the line she mentioned with the jacket. He's like, Dad, I know you only put on the jacket because you think that if you don't, then a bad person will, which in and of itself I do agree with. If good people don't stand up and do something, then the bad people will. We do need good people being cops and stuff. But I felt like the line was only thrown in there to explain he's one of the good cops. We know most cops are bad.
Right.
Most cops are corrupt, but this one's not. And I'm like, you didn't need that line because not all cops are bad.
Yeah.
Well, and again, that just goes to some of the I think the lackluster writing or finesse of the writing in this one, whereas they were letting certain things like that slide where they could get in maybe, again, a jab that politically has an undertone today that's more relevant. And it's crazy because I told you, I said, that's what boggles my mind is 2018 was not that long ago.
Yeah.
But look at how far we've come in terms of we've got to interject like all of these types of little nuance, little jabs of what matters today into everything. And it takes away, I think, from not complete. I mean, this is a movie that at least handles it well enough that I didn't feel like it was hampered by that at all. Trust me. I mean, like I agree.
No,
3 out of 4
movie.
stars.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the wrap up.
Yeah.
But it still is one of those situations where I had to knock off a star for it simply because of that.
I think I gave the first one 3.5.
I did too.
Same.
And I think we were kind of all on that page. This movie definitely, like I said while we were watching the review, is like the visuals were jarring for me. My kids, which this movie's geared towards younger people. My 10-year-old watched it, loved it, but there were a lot of times that he turned to me in the theater and was just like, I'm not sure what's going on. And I had to try to explain it the best I could, what I thought was going on, but I wasn't 100% sure either. And so that I feel like the first movie is more gettable. It's something you watch it and visually you understand what's happening.
Yes.
It's not overload on the visuals. There's a lot of the visuals in this movie. I don't understand it because the first movie didn't suffer from this. The first movie had that comic book etching look, but it wasn't blurry. There was a lot of things in this movie. If the focus is always on the center of the screen and everything on the outer edges was intentionally made blurry. So there were scenes where, like the scene where him and his mom are up on the water tower talking, and there's moments where him and his mom are close together and they're both in focus, but then she moves away or he walks away and she's in focus and he's way too blurry. And I felt like in those scenes, like they should have both been in focus, and that was done intentionally, like to add this
it's
depth
more of
or whatever.
Because it's a double line thing that is current in comic books. The first one had it a little bit, but nowhere. Because I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's much more present in this movie.
And I didn't know for sure if it was just me because I never saw the first one in theaters.
No, I kept wiping my eyes. Literally, I was like, "Do I have goop in my eyes because
the first
of
one
my allergies or
I
something?"
saw. I think I watched streaming. I don't think I went and saw it in theaters. At least I don't remember seeing it in theaters. And I was wondering, it's like, well, maybe because I didn't see the first one in theaters, maybe that double line effect that is present in some scenes of the first one would have been more pronounced in IMAX, but I don't think so. I think you're right. I think it wasn't as well done in this one, like you said, where some of that comic book double line stuff made it look blurry instead of like really focusing the attention.
Yeah, most of my gripes were with the visuals.
Well, I was going to say, and there were definitely times where it felt like as much of a progression they made in that style of how they wanted to tell this story, I think was better than the first one, but in an artistic way, not necessarily better in a narrative way.
Yeah.
And again, I think that can hamper it based on it. It's a movie. But
the
also,
narrative matters.
I do want to say on point with the visuals and production, I'm kind of switching from the negative now to the positive.
Yeah.
And what I loved about it is it definitely kept my attention throughout in terms of because of how fast paced it was.
Yeah.
But there were actually times too, and you mentioned this in the review a little bit, but there were actually a couple times where I felt like I had already received some of the emotion in the slower moments, and I kind of wanted them to end a little bit faster.
Oh yes,
I felt like they drew them out a little bit, and I said positive, not negative.
But yeah,
so back onto the positive. There were some things in this that I think they did very, very well that no other movie, especially the Tom Holland or any of the Marvel multiverse movies.
Oh yeah, this movie trumps all the other Marvel multiverse movies.
One of the benefits it has of doing this art style and it being a cartoon, quote unquote, or animated, is the fact that it dabbles in the Lego universe. It dabbles in it shows in scenes from Venom. It throws in real world. It shows Donald Glover
from Tom Holland movie.
It shows scenes of both Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and
Andrew Garfield.
All
Andrew
of
Garfield.
the homages and nods to Spider-Man.
Fantastic.
It's like not just throughout the years, but throughout every media, like comic books, video games, cartoons, live action.
They had nailed the art style.
I love it. Even the kid in his college dorm was playing Spider-Man on his computer.
The PS5.
Well,
exactly.
That version shows up.
Awesome.
Like the actual PS5 Spider-Man's in the.
I didn't see the PS5.
Yeah.
But
I
there.
thought he's playing it on a little computer
he's
monitor.
there as
but
one of the
that's
alternate
cool.
Spider-Mans in the little
Okay,
society.
that's cool.
But the cool thing about those visuals is that think about Multiverse of Madness when they're going through all of these different iterations of worlds that are just bizarre,
just random
nonsensical artistic express, like where they're turn into putty or paint or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there was no rhyme or reason. Whereas this one, it is an animated film, and then they took all of these other properties and these other different artistic styles, and they combined them. It was like, okay, this is how you make the multiverse make sense in a cohesive story and in a cohesive vision, and tie it all together neatly with a bow on it. And I was like, yeah, every time there was a new kind of expression in the way that they portrayed a comic book character or even a live action one, a version of Spider-Man, I was drawn to it, and it was a feast for the eyes. I mean, that was one area where the visuals really paid off, and I was like, I can't wait to see the next scene because I'm not sure exactly where they're headed.
The action scenes were great. Like that the Skytrain thing where they're going up on the train looking. Oh, that was fantastic.
That was.
Agreed. So I mean, that along with again the overarching narrative, I don't think it was so complicated that by the end you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I think there's still maybe a few plot threads that are kind of not needed or at least a little bit strung out.
Or maybe they could explain a little better. But
yes.
It's still, I would say overall, like everything in this movie makes way more sense than what's going on in Marvel's multiverse right now. And I did ask you this, and I'm going to ask again just so Sean, I was like, at this point with Disney's MCU making kind of dud after dud, and Sony, they're still about 50-50. Like Venom's not the greatest, and Morbius was terrible. But like right now with the Spider-verse movies and everything, they're doing better than Marvel. And the way Tom Holland series ends, they set it up to where he could continue on in MCU, but the way he's set up, he doesn't have to. Like Sony could bring him in and be like, well, now we don't want to partner with Disney anymore, but we're going to continue making movies, and they could. So here's the question: do they need Marvel anymore? At the time,
Not at this point.
At the time, they needed the MCU because they had run the property into the ground, and they knew, well, nobody's going to watch our movies, but if we incorporate him into the Avengers, everybody will watch it. Well, now everybody's invested in the Spider-Verse more so than they are Marvel's multiverse. If you bring Tom Holland into that,
I will say I think that's actually, that's one positive side effect of them having a Spider-Verse. Is it is still one character. As opposed to the multiverse, which then throws in the possibility of any character from Marvel showing up, and that's where you kind of left not only boggled and mind-boggling in terms of what methods or paradoxical things can happen or be introduced.
The Spider-Verse is part of the multiverse. It's
but it's
specifically only dealing with
right, and knowing that Sony can only handle the one property because that's what they have the rights to.
It makes it easier to digest.
Exactly, and it makes it easier to focus on one particular type of story and story beat as opposed to why isn't the Guardians of the Galaxy here, or why isn't this person showing up in this universe, or it becomes way too big and expansive the way Marvel has handled the multiverse with all of their characters and giving you again a visual feast of fandom versus actual substance.
And I think that's because they've handled it poorly. Like I think it can be done well, but go ahead.
What's your favorite thing about the 3 Tom Holland Spider-Man movies?
Oh, No Way Home.
No Way Home.
Which
Why?
Is the multiple
Spider-Man. Because all 3 of them are together. All
Tobey
3 of
Maguire
them could
and
be
Andrew
together
Garfield.
with Sony.
And even then, it's how they tied the story up with the Peter Parkers coming together to help the one Peter Parker.
Again, this is just like fan theories and such, but because Sony's already said that they're actively developing a live-action Miles Morales movie, which makes sense. These are popular. Why not? So here's the thing. Wouldn't it be interesting if these end with him crossing over into a live-action role?
That would be cool.
and you also have like the other live action like what if like the next one ends with him like crossing over and meeting like the other live
Well, they
action,
introduced like live
they
action
showed 'em,
people
yeah.
in these movies
Yeah.
in this
That
previous
would be
movie. So
that would actually be
sweet.
And that
that
would
would
be
be
cool.
a very
Yeah.
clever
would
way
be.
of
Yeah.
introducing Miles Morales to the masses
Mm-hmm.
in such a way that it would pigeonhole Marvel
Mm-hmm.
on the Disney side of things to do this. Because if you get enough people
well, they
who
don't
not
have
only
to
love
partner with Disney if
Yeah.
they don't want to. They can do it on their own.
no, but I'm saying it's going to pigeonhole Disney into saying this Miles Morales that Sony introduced is popular enough. We've got to get him over here.
Yeah.
We have to use him now in our multiverse because that's who people want to see.
Or if I Sony say no, we're just going to make our own live action
Yeah.
movies with these people. Like
They can, but why would they? I mean, the same reason they partnered with Marvel in the first place to not only keep their IP, but also to still share in the profits of what Marvel produces.
But if
it
Marvel's
would be
not
more
making
money.
anything worthwhile anymore, that's what I'm saying. Sony,
But Sony's not that protective of their property.
they're not. But I could just see
That's the reason they gave it up to begin with regards to other stuff.
because
I mean,
they've talked about we've thought about doing more with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield now, and it's like they could
They
go on their
both
own.
want to.
Yeah.
And Tom
Yeah.
Holland says he wants to continue doing Spider-Man as long as he can.
So I
So
don't know. It'll be interesting to
that's-
see where it goes.
because that's the one person that we've not seen
And
show
maybe
up in
he'll pop up in the
Spider-Verse.
third one. They mentioned him in this one, but they didn't show him. You're right.
And they all, they
There's
exactly.
a quick that little dweeb and Doctor Strange. That was
Yeah,
a lot, yeah.
right.
But I don't know. I think, they could continue on with Disney. I think they also have a chance at not if they wanted to. But that's totally up to Sony and what they want to do. I guess that's really we already know Tom Holland's supposed to appear in at least one more movie, which is probably going to be the Secret Wars event. So I'd be interested to see what plays out there because I think that'll determine where Sony goes in the future as well.
It'd be interesting to see if they try to, because they already have the third Beyond the Spider-Verse, I guess,
that's
written
planned.
and done.
It's supposed to come out next summer, I think.
So I'm
Yeah.
assuming they've already entered production and they're working on it, and it's
Yeah.
probably in post-production at this point if it's coming out next year, because they're going to start marketing that thing at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But it's like, for me, it'd be interesting to see if Sony uses this as a trump card to kind of play up
Oh,
the
to
fact
force
of
Disney's hand? Yeah.
to force Disney's hand into no, you're going to start incorporating elements of our Spider. Because think about it, Venom was the same way with the way it ended, and who knows where that's headed in terms of what Marvel does with it or Disney does
Right.
with it.
Yeah.
But they already somewhat incorporated the elements of
Mm-hmm.
Tom Hardy's Venom playing a bigger role in the Disney Marvel.
Let's say, I
multiverse.
think they still have plans to obviously work together. It's just interesting to me to see how far that's going to continue going if
I mean, at this
if
point,
Disney
if
can't
Marvel and
produce,
Disney
yeah.
don't produce a well told, which we've seen the MCU just
Yeah, it's in
be
shambles
complete-
right now.
yeah, right in our front of our very eyes. We would
Yeah.
have never thought this would have happened 2
Yeah,
years
it's
ago.
funny that it's like, I never would have expected Sony to make a better Marvel movie than the MCU because at the time that's why Sony partnered with Disney was because they were
Yes.
making crap
Yeah.
Spider-Man films.
Yeah.
By the way, I looked it up because it's March 29th of next year, so it's less,
Oh gosh,
less than
wow.
a year.
They're definitely
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
post production.
It's not even a full year.
We'll probably have a trailer by the end of the summer.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised at all. I mean, that's going to be
So-
huge. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know, Sean, that was one point of contention for you. You weren't really happy with the to be continued.
Well, I kind of it's like after the first movie, I feel like at the end of that that they're gonna do this again.
Yeah.
But there's not
It's not a
it's not a
cliffhanger.
cliffhanger. And I
I
think
love
that was one of the
cliffhangers.
things where I went and saw. And in some movies I do.
Yeah.
In this movie, the cliffhanger was well done. I will say, like it gave me that I kind of had an idea like of how that was gonna come
Yeah.
about, but when it happened, I was just like, oh, and
Yeah, same.
and it's like it's good, but I'm just not that big on the cliffhangers. Like
Yeah.
like you say, even the Lord of the Rings wraps up the story of each movie.
True.
That's true.
And before it gives you a cliffhanger, and I didn't feel like this one wrapped up the story of that movie.
Well, and it's interesting because I kind of knew it was building towards it, almost because of the way
Well, it got to 2 hours and 10 minutes, and it's
Exactly,
like,
and I was
we're not at a climax yet.
Yeah, right.
What's going on?
And honestly, the music kept building, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, either this is going to be the big battle right here, or I was like, this is getting really long.
Yeah.
And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden it wraps. I'm like, oh, okay. And then it was funny because I turned to Keith, and I was just like, I did not know. And he was like, oh.
Yeah.
He was like, when it first came out, it said part 1.
Oh,
and they
see, I didn't know that.
removed
Yeah.
They
part
changed
1.
the time. It was Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, and then when they decided, like, they changed it to Across the Spider-Verse and Beyond the Spider-Verse because it was Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and 2. So.
And I honestly completely forgot
Yeah.
about it. So I was actually, when he told me that, and I was like, okay, I had a little bit of a different taste in my mouth, but I agree. It's like kind of like the Pirates trilogy. Pirates 1 is one complete story.
Yeah.
They were not expecting to make that a trilogy.
Yeah.
Then you see
Two,
Dead Man's Chest,
yeah.
and it's like, oh, this is definitely leading into 3.
Yeah.
And same with Matrix. Matrix was the same way with Reloaded and Revolution.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, Revelation was the 4th one, right? Revolution was the 3rd Matrix.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure I got that. Or Revolutions. What? Yeah, Revelations was the 4th.
There's
movie.
Revelations and Revolutions.
Revolutions was the 3rd. I'm getting.
I don't remember.
Those confuse me. But anyways, the thing was they did the same thing with those
Yes.
movies. They were shot at the same time, and they were honestly spaced like 6 months apart. But it was just a cash grab.
Resurrections is the 4th one. Resurrection.
Is it Revelations?
No, it's Reloaded.
No,
and
Revelations is the.
There's not
is
a
a-
Revelations.
I think there is. It's like the cartoon, isn't it? Isn't there an Animatrix?
That's the Animatrix. It's just called the Animatrix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm making.
There's
stuff up.
there's Matrix Revolutions. Revolutions is the 3rd.
Is the 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay, I said that one. Right.
Reloaded was the sequel.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't think that they're necessarily doing that here. I think because of the success of 2018s, they were like, okay, well, let's make a sequel and make it into like a. I think it
overarching
fits.
Yeah, it does.
In terms of the comic book feel, which I liked.
Yeah.
When the to be continued
Yeah, to
pops
be
up
continued, yeah.
in the comic book, I was like, oh, okay,
Miles
that's kind of
Morales
clever.
will return. It's
Right.
like, no, duh.
But overall,
what is there beyond the Spider-Verse? And that's
The
kind of where it
MCU.
leads me to where
The
like maybe
MCU.
in the,
Yeah.
the real
I don't know.
world.
We'll see.
I'm
It'll be-
intrigued.
Yeah.
I want to see where it goes. I mean, they're well done.
That's one that right there can be said probably the most positive thing about this film.
Oh,
It's
you
like
actually
it
are
left me
intrigued,
wanting
yeah.
more.
Yeah.
I actually
No one cares
want
where
to
Marvel's
see.
going right
No.
now.
Well, we know
I mean,
Kane's
some
not
people
going
do.
anywhere because he's locked in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
He's not. I
He's
know.
not, but I'm just even because I did like that. I mean, yeah, you have the Spot who went from being like kind of a joke to an actual threat, but even having like Miguel O'Hara as kind of the main antagonist of this movie was such a
Is that
non-traditional.
Oscar Isaac?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
He's actually the first actor now to portray 3 different Marvel roles. There's been
'Cause he's
actors
got
in the
Moon
past
Knight
Moon
and-
Knight. He did Apocalypse in the terrible X-Men
Apocalypse.
movie, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then now this, because there's been plenty of actors that have done 2 roles, but he's the first one that is now 3 different characters.
Okay.
So.
But definitely worth going and checking out.
Yeah.
Continue to make it a successful treat
I
out
do
of
want
the box office.
My thought though that I was going to finish
Yeah,
was
go
that
ahead.
I just felt like even though he's a non-traditional antagonist, like he's not necessarily evil, a villain, he was still way more interesting than any of the villains in Phase 4 or 5 so far from Marvel. Like I was like,
Yeah.
he's actually a better because he actually makes sense.
I mean,
is why he's an antagonist.
even in the 2018, Kingpin
Yeah.
is
Oh,
a
way
better
better.
villain than anything
They
Marvel
nailed his
MCU has done.
because Kingpin in the comics really is like the only thing he loves is his wife, and he's very protective of her. And like they nail that aspect. And I'm like, these are the things that the MCU has stopped doing is the emotional aspects.
Paying attention to
and
the
yeah.
One of the things I'll say my last thought on it was what had to do with the theme of the canon. And how all of the stories they have a
Yes.
canon. And one of the things that I was afraid of, and I don't think they're going to do, but I got the feeling when they started mentioning that, and him saying, "Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to save, my dad and change the canon," and it made me think we're headed to a point where it's going to point out the fact that you don't always have to stick to the canon, and that we can make changes to the things that people hold dear in the comic book and superhero world and things like that. And that was one of the things when they started bringing that up, I was like, okay, now if you say that like sticking to the canon is not always the best thing and that we can transition and move away from that, then that opens up a can of worms for me because now you're not sticking to the source.
See, my gripe with that was I agree with you, but it maybe for a different reason. Was mainly because I thought the whole canon explanation it wasn't done poorly in the movie. It was done well as a crux for the plot. I thought it was a little bit of a MacGuffin. I thought the way it was explained in terms of there's all these pivotal moments that happen in every single universe, and then of course it was just like okay, but you're not really explaining. I mean, other than there just being this, we went to this one world and we changed what was supposed to happen, and now the world is at risk. And then you see all of these other spider people showing up and planting devices, and it's like, we may be able to save it. And I'm like, what the hell are these devices?
That was weird.
What do you mean they're saving it?
There's a couple.
It was just kind of like you made a plot point, but you're just telling me the surface level explanation. There's no depth here as to how this is believable.
It's a very common like time travel multiverse type trope. The Dark Tower.
Change this, it'll break everything.
The Dark Towers, like Stephen King's Dark Tower does it. Doctor Who does it. And it is not, I think, not a problem, because I do like the idea that there are, especially within such a vast multiverse of like, well, if anything can happen, it's like, well, no, not anything can happen, because there are certain rules like the laws of physics to time, but they don't really explain that in the movie, like you're saying.
Well, but it goes against the MCU multiverse, because in the explanation of that in the Avengers movie, they talk about how there's branches or threads, and it's like, even though you did something that changed this one, all you did was created a new branch. You didn't damage the branch that's already there.
Right.
You just started a new one.
Well, and that's
I'm like, well,
to
then
be
that
the
doesn't...
main level threat of Kang, is that he infiltrates all the branches.
Well, that's kind of Loki and the TV, or Loki and the TVA come in, is like when things that happen that aren't supposed to happen, they come and trim the branch, which, granted, they're doing that in the Loki thing because of Kang, but it technically it's supposed to be kind of a...
But it doesn't mess up the previous branch or the, whatever timeline.
Well, and that's also where incursions come in that they mentioned in Multiverse of Madness, but none of that makes sense because Marvel hasn't explained any of it. Because that's kind of how the canon thing in Spider-Verse is working so far, is it's kind of working like the incursions in the comics, which I get.
It's like you can change certain things, but Uncle Ben's going to die in every single one.
Or the Chief is going to, or whatever.
Right, because that's important to what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man.
Right. Yeah.
And that comes from higher powers within the Marvel universe, but I could see why they didn't want to go that.
It'd be like saying,
either.
if Iron Man doesn't get kidnapped, then he never becomes Iron Man.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that has to happen to him in every multiverse or every universe.
Mind, like it is a fine line to walk, because I don't want them to be like, well, tradition doesn't matter in that regard, like you're saying with the canon. But at the same time, I do like the idea that part of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man is that he can't be okay with just letting people die, even if it's canon. Like the fact that Miguel O'Hara is like, well, this has to happen. I get his point, but that's also part of what makes him the antagonist, is because that's a very un-Spider-Man thing. Is Spider-Man always tries to save everyone?
and it's I hate to say it, I don't want to bring politics too much in it, but it's the whole communist socialist manifesto.
Well,
it's the idea of, if all suffer, but it helps one person, then it was worth it. Whereas if you're gonna focus on the individual, then one individual suffering is bad enough. But when you multiply that by millions, it's like, who's to say that it really hurt anybody?
Again, it's like
because now it's just a statistic, and it's like them playing with the morality of it is fine. And like you said, but to me, it just never went deeper than surface level.
Yeah.
And that was my only issue, is when they're explaining why he can't break these canon events. Again, it's all just to make sure it's like, hey, here's the story element, we have to have it, don't do this. Oh, well, I'm Miles Morales and I'm going to be the one difference here and I'm going to do it. And so it was just kind of, again, it wasn't bad, it was just a little bit like, because you got all these other plot threads, I know you can't go deep here, but it's a little strong to introduce that now and not focus on that as a main plot.
Depends on where they go with that in the third one, because that to me I think will determine how much I like what they're doing with it. But we don't know how it's going to end.
Alrighty, guys, let's move on to finally our headlines. We talked a little bit long about it.
Yeah, that was good though.
Yeah, that was good.
I mean, it was a good movie. It just like there were things we disliked, but still, it was a
great movie. Yeah. And usually it's like the ones we're impassioned about, we're going to talk more about.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's move into our headlines.
See, we're passionate about the movie, so we talk about it. We're not passionate about
being
these headlines.
To be critical.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
To critique.
Yep.
Critique.
Because we love it. And we're always critical of Hollywood.
You know what's not working?
Hollywood.
Yeah. We're about to get into it.
So the first news, I know our headline's more about SAG actually admitting, or not admitting, they approved a vote to put striking on the table.
Yeah.
But also,
which means they probably will. Who
before negotiations for the SAG deals start tomorrow and are supposed to hopefully have reached their conclusion and come up with a deal by the end of the month.
Yeah.
All that really has been stated there is that they have voted to approve a strike if need be. But the DGA, the Directors Guild, is close to inking a deal with the studios, and apparently they've made tremendous strides there and are very happy. Apparently, those members are very happy to be working alongside the producers. Don't really know a lot of that. Again, not being a part officially of Hollywood, an official part of Hollywood, I don't know the inside game baseball that's going on.
Yeah.
But I do know that it's kind of funny that, other than really producers and directors are really the top tier on the production sheet.
It's not surprising that the directors got what they wanted before the writers and the actors.
Well, and the way they're billing this, of course, is like, hey, well, if we come up with a deal with them, maybe it'll pressure the other guilds.
It's like, look, the directors are cool. Why aren't you guys?
Right. So again, all of the details are kind of.
You're not replacing the directors with AI.
Yes. Well, and it's funny because apparently one of the things that they're supposedly, again, there's no particulars until the deals are made, but they made strides in kind of worthy compensation for what artificial intelligence will bring to filmmaking. So I do think it's interesting that AI is being talked about amongst all of the different guilds and how it's going to impact the industry. And you're having different ones, I think, at different tiers, whether it's the actors or the writers.
Some
or
are
the
worried
directors.
about it, and others are like, "Oh no, this will be fantastic to use."
Or they're just saying, okay, we're willing to allow these certain parameters, and these parameters are a little bit looser than maybe the other guilds would like. So what may be good for the directors aren't necessarily good for the writers, and
they don't give any
actors.
specifics, but it does. It's like the negotiations made advances on wages, streaming residuals, and creative rights, while ensuring artificial intelligence would not replace the duties performed by the DGA's 19,000 union members. So it's all the same thing, because we've heard that before. Streaming residuals, and then AI. Those are the two biggest we've heard, I think, throughout all of these negotiations and the strikes. And it's funny because when we talk about streaming residuals, a topic we're about to have is them removing things from streaming. So it's just
Isn't it interesting though, we've talked about the AI thing, and it's just it amazes me how quickly people have gotten afraid of it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me afraid of it. If that many people are scared of what it can do or what it might end up doing, like that makes my hairs perk up a little bit, because I'm like, man, I mean, maybe we really should be scared of this thing. At first, I'm just like, come on, guys, it's Alexa.
Yeah. Well,
It's
me,
not that good, but no,
yes,
it's.
but it's. I think in terms of, and I think about it in the industry that I'm in, working in television, it's not really AI as much as it is like automation.
Yeah.
And automation has been sweeping the industry for years at this point, and it's really cut down on the workforce. And so I think you have these people who are within these guilds, and again, this is part of the reason why I'm not necessarily against unions to a certain degree, but when unions become bargaining for things that are just no longer, there's something to be said, and I think this is why the directors are kind of coming to they're kind of coming to a better conclusion than some of the other guilds, and it's primarily because the directors are usually in the process involving producers and involving studios. They kind of know what it's going to take they're going to get their cut at the end of the day. Some may be more independent than others and may not get as big a cut, but of course the director's getting paid. They're going to be probably one of the first people on a production to get paid, as long as the movie is successful. But when it comes to writers, or when it comes to small-time actors, you're going to have a lot more of the people who fill out that guild that are not your big headliners, and it kind of comes into question as to, well, I'm just this lowly writer that's getting my start, but is my job at risk because somebody shows up and they know how to manipulate an AI algorithm better than me, and then they send in a treatment of something that it wrote 80% of it, and they went in and spruced it up, and now all of a sudden they're either one getting a better deal or getting better paying gigs, or is it one of those things where it's like, oh, this guy classifies himself as a writer, but he really just uses this AI program, and now I'm out of the job.
That's the one that
and that to me is the thing, is it's like you have more people, I think, below the line or though even those who are even somewhat middle, trying to make those upper tiers of a film production that are either going to get overshadowed or put out of the job. And of course, in that regard, well, the union's doing its job by saying, we're going to protect you. We're going to keep you in the job. We're going to keep you in the workforce.
Do you stifle like progress and productivity? Because it's like, look at the Industrial Revolution. And like you said, automation, before every vehicle is made, handmade. And then Henry Ford created the assembly line. And that takes away. And it's like anytime there's huge advancements, jobs are going to begin to disappear. But new jobs also are formed. And it does, because I understand if you're well off and you've been doing this job, you're a writer or an actor that are in your 40s or later. It's like you're not going to go learn AI, as easily to be able to ensure that you still have a job. So it is scary to think, my job might be replaced by a computer.
For instance, it was actually funny. I just recently watched the movie at my parents' house. I talked about it last week. It was Alfred Hitchcock's. I'm forgetting the daggone name of it. It was the one right before Lifeboat.
It wasn't Saboteur, was it?
No.
It was the
and it's got
Shadow of a Doubt.
Shadow of a Doubt.
That was it.
And there was a scene in it where they're obviously picking up the phone and they're talking to the operator and they're like, I need to be connected to so-and-so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I actually asked my parents, we had to pause it for one thing and somebody's going to the bathroom. And I was just like, do you all remember, did you all actually use operators? They're like, oh, yeah. And I was like, do you remember when those stopped? Like when there were no more, it was all automated. And they were like, it had to have been in the 80s sometime.
Yeah. And I'm like, job that no longer exists.
Exactly. And I was like, talk about all of the others, whether it's the truckers or the farmers or all these, or, automation moving into, so many different industries, fast food, because workers are demanding $15 an hour for a job that's not worth it. That was never meant to be a career path.
It's going to be completely, you're going to buy it by a computer, it's going to be cooked by a computer.
Yeah. But that's the interesting thing is then there's something like that nobody thinks about anymore. Yeah. And nobody's arguing, what happened to all the phone operators? It's like, I assume most of them had to get other jobs in other industries. Yeah. Because a lot of things, especially with AI, people don't think about these things in terms of these are not overnight. I mean, there's some things that happen overnight. I mean, look at what the iPhone did in 2007 and BlackBerry was non-existent a couple of years later. Yeah. Because when you don't adapt, you die. And I think it's the same with any industry, and especially in the creative industry. So for all of these unions, all this union talk about, protecting people's jobs and the talent, I'm like, no, the talented people will protect themselves because they know how to adapt. And the ones who are really talented will find ways to be successful in an industry. Sometimes I think, like you're saying, when it gets to be such a huge apparatus like Hollywood is, you start to see the pangs of producing the schlock that they've produced and then wondering why nobody turns up or the box office sales are down. It's not just COVID. It happens to be some of the movies you're putting out, and people don't want to show up to the theater and put butts in seats.
I got this. So what you're saying is that canon events like technological progress should not be tampered with, and we should sacrifice all those jobs so that society can be a better Spider-Man. Got it.
See, I'm not even as worried about the job itself as I'm worried about the craft. And it's one of those things where you talk about a phone operator. I'm like, anybody can do that job. That's not a job you went to college for or that you worked 20 years of your life to hone your skill to be a phone operator.
To transfer somebody to another line.
You think about the person who spent 30 years of their life learning how to manipulate metal to make a sword, and then all of a sudden they come out with a metal press and they're able to put 100 swords out an hour. And you're just like, well, 30 years of my life just went down the drain. What did I do all that for? It's like, and they're at a point in their life where they can't learn the new thing. That doesn't mean that they're not talented. They were talented for 30 years of their life when they were the best swordsmith in town. But now there's a metal press, and that replaced everything. And and I think of that way the same way with writing. If you are a writer and that's your natural talent and you've went to school for it and you've had experience and you've done this and spent your whole life honing your skill, only to have it, 80% of it replaced by an AI, and now all you get to do is grade papers like a teacher in school.
Just doctor up
doctor up what crap. It did. Yeah. Then your craft is no longer existent. And then again, what are you supposed to do? Go and find a new craft? I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if that's the craft that you have.
Again, I think that mindset somehow it puts the onus not necessarily on the individual but the society as a whole in terms of coming up with solutions that again, it's kind of like and I don't want to get too political on this issue, but like the climate change issue.
Yeah,
And people
okay.
want to talk about, rising sea levels. And I'm like, but nobody's going to walk out their front door tomorrow living in Florida and be like, oh my gosh, I'm underwater. It's like, if you know that this thing is happening over time, gradually, you either, again, you prepare for the inevitable of what you can see coming if those are the consequences. And I feel like AI is the same way. I get the trepidation and the I want to be a little cautious about approaching this new technology. I completely understand that. But I think the real people who are a wizard at their craft are not worried about it. They see it as a tool, just like anybody would see the computer as a tool, as opposed to, we're going to stick with typewriters because that's really what I know how to use. It's like anybody who really is skilled and knows how to actually be a pro and a master at their craft is not looking at AI thinking, oh God, it's going to replace me. Yeah. They're looking at it thinking, and I'm with you. I mean, we've talked about our the dangers of AI, and I definitely think there is a chance for certain dangers to be eclipsed and happen overnight, and we not be prepared. I definitely understand that worry.
Skynet, it's happening.
Right. It's like, and I definitely think that part of the worry is how fastly paced AI is compared to human ingenuity. There's definitely, I think, a worry there that's a great cause for concern. But when it comes down to the practicality of where we're at right now, I don't think what they're arguing for, certain rules and regulations to be put in place in terms of the industry, that's all fine, and I think that should be on the table. But to try to get to the point of regulating it so highly to the point of making it irrelevant or useless, I'm like, okay, well now you're pretty much, again, it's kind of the idea of a company getting so big that they don't understand just how one misstep can really ruin anything, and it just takes
Disney?
one other hint, hint.
Yeah.
And all it does is just take one other influence, I mean, look Walmart was huge. Jeff Bezos comes in with Amazon, and it's Walmart on the internet.
Yeah,
and
now Walmart's just full of meth addicts and rednecks.
Well, and to their credit, it's like they're still hugely influential in terms of, they're still a highly profitable, business, because not everybody has Prime and 2-day shipping to their area.
Yeah, the meth addicts and the rednecks.
But ultimately, I still think it comes down to the idea of, you got to embrace the change to a certain degree. And if you don't, you're going to catch yourself looking in the rear view.
Oh, wow.
Gosh, would you stop interrupting me? Gosh, I can't get a damn thought out. I don't even know where I was going.
Go ahead.
No, I can't. I don't know where I was going.
You just ruined
embrace
it for
the
him.
change. Embrace the change.
I think one thing that's important to remember with all of this stuff is like you use this example about the typewriter and the computer, and I'm thinking to myself, a writer can use a pen. They use a typewriter. They'll learn how to work a computer. The only one that needs to worry about their job is the typewriter, because the typewriter has been replaced.
Yes.
The writer can use those tools because that's what they are.
Right.
AI, if it's going to be used as a tool, a writer will use it. They'll adapt and learn how to use it. Mm-hmm. What they're afraid of is that it's going to be a replacement. They're thinking they're the typewriter and the AI is the computer that's going to replace them, and they're no longer relevant. If AI is, if they set AI up to be used as a tool, I have no doubt that writers will adapt and be able to use it and maybe even more further or hone their craft. But I think they're seeing it moving such at a fast pace that they think it's going to be the replacement, and they're no longer useful.
And presumably, I think you're right. I think what's happening is that is what they're trying to ink in the deal right now. They're trying to get that some kind of clarification of what does this look like, and how can you be so broad yet intentional about what you want this to be and how it performs in our industry when it's a technology that literally it's rapidly advancing, because that's what AI by definition does. The machine learning does is rapidly grow and understand things.
But we're rapidly accepting it. And that's where my fear is.
I don't know. Actually, yes and no. I think more people are questioning how AI is used in our everyday life. I think more people are kind of curious about how it's already in use in ways we don't know versus, when 07 hit and the iPhone came out and everybody was like, I want one. I need one. This is going to change everything. And it did.
Yeah.
And that to me...
No, you're right. AI is not like that.
I think AI is totally different in
It's
that
still
sense.
People are cautious.
Yeah.
And that's, I just think there should be maybe... I'm like
I think
Elon.
the
I'm like,
idea-
there should be some more caution.
Oh no, I agree. I think there should definitely be with anything that we advance. I mean, I can't wait to see Christopher Nolan's film, but look at Oppenheimer making the atomic bomb, and even he regretted later in his life because he thought he invented the thing that was going to end the world, and it could. I mean, we still have nuclear weapons, and they very well could if used that way. And that's
but in an opposite way. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. Yeah, it's like, and that's the thing.
No,
It's
no,
like-
you interrupt him.
it's fine. I don't mind.
Totally fair.
I don't mind at all. But it was it's one of the things where like I get the fear of AI, especially when we have so many movies like Terminator and all these things that have taught us that if AI becomes self-aware, how do we know it won't kill us?
Isn't that funny?
And,
Hollywood's the one that gave us the damn idea.
Yeah.
To be afraid of it, and now they're afraid of it.
They're afraid of it. Of course, that's Hollywood. I love it.
That's
actually,
great.
actually, I love it. But
Again, is it the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Chicken or the egg?
I do get the fear of it, but right now, and I mean, who knows? We don't know how advanced AI will eventually get. I know when I watch some things online that are generated by AI, I'm like,
I'm
we
disturbed.
have nothing. It's like I'm disturbed, but I'm like, we have nothing to fear. If this is what AI thinks a movie is, I don't want to see it.
Hey, AI wrote me a country song about two gay men having sex on a beach, and it was fantastic.
What?
You
I didn't tell you that?
No, you did not share that with
Yes,
us.
I had AI.
You shared the
Right.
one about the
Random?
dog,
Yeah.
and I read the one about the dog, and
No.
just felt like I was like, it sounds like a generic country, which
Yeah,
is good.
no. So
I mean,
I
but it
ended
just
up
sounded like
going
generic
to a country song about two gay men making love on a beach, and it was great.
That might be the first country song ever written about that.
It was
subject.
great.
Now we just need to have it
Yeah,
come up with a tune.
Yeah, I don't know the tune. It had a
bring it
bridge and a
in.
chorus and everything. It was great.
But
yeah,
see, that's
I
the thing.
get-
But again, and this is what AI is so far.
A joke.
Is
Yeah.
it's a
It's
joke.
it's
but
laughter.
It's imitation of everything that we've infused in it.
Yeah.
All it is
Yes.
taking everything that we've already put on the internet.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that the scary part isn't here. It's just starting out.
Yeah.
The scary thing is when it starts to
Having its own thoughts. Yeah.
think about things in ways that we haven't even thought of yet or engineered yet because it has this amalgamation of knowledge that no human brain can
Well,
muster.
and I was thinking about this one because I get it. They're afraid it's going to replace them, but I see how it could be both sides because for me, all right, I wrote Margaret's Monsters, and for anybody who doesn't, I guess this might be an announcement. I don't know if we've ever said this. I do have an idea for a sequel that I've been working on. So if I put the first one into an AI and be like, I want you to generate a sequel to this, it's going to be, I feel like, a very generic sequel based on what's in that story. But there's aspects I know for a fact that I'm including in the sequel from other things that it has no clue about that it wouldn't know to put in there. So it's like it can give me this very basic frame that I would have to go in and completely rewrite. And so it's like if you use it as like an outline, maybe like I get to the degree that it could be a tool or it could be something where it's like, well, now it's replacing me. And it really, I guess, depends on the producers in the studio.
Yeah.
If they want something really good, something really well done, you can use AI as an outline, but you still need that human touch.
Yeah.
It's like if you just want a generic Marvel sequel, I guarantee you AI could spit those out like nothing flat right now.
Well, even if you gave AI not only Margaret's Monsters, but if you gave it all the sources that you pulled your new ideas from for the sequel, because you didn't just come. I mean, they came from somewhere.
Everything's inspired by something,
right?
yes.
So if you gave it all of the inspiration, it still couldn't give you a carbon copy of what your mind created, of what your idea of the sequel would be.
That's how I feel about any true professional.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is still the worry that it could literally take the entire library of Marvel comics and probably, I mean, we see this all the time.
I feel like it could spit out a better Marvel movie than what Disney's done recently.
No, absolutely.
But that's where the fear is.
Well, and I think too, it's like
write better crap then.
No, but I think also you have fan made. We've seen it online before. We've seen fan made fan fiction come up with great story arcs that then never come to transpire in the work of art itself, and some people are left disappointed because it's like, wow, that would have been a better way to take the story.
Almost every
so it's kind of an interesting, like, sometimes wouldn't you want the better alternative? And if AI can take these ideas that are a compendium of everything that has been created in a particular medium and say, well, this actually would be, here's several ideas, and you kind of piece it together, and you're like, wow, that, maybe not. Okay, it doesn't get the dialogue down to a T, like it doesn't understand that complexity, but hey, it got a treatment of the story points, and these bullet points are fantastic.
Do you think we'll ever see AI accredited in the films?
Well, I was going to say, not accredited, because again, if it gets to that point, I think society's already doomed. I think what should be at the top of all of these guilds' list is at least mandating when AI is used. I have no problem watching content. Obviously, like you said, that the crap that we've seen generated from these video, it's almost dreamlike. It's like you're
drug.
Yes,
it's like you've taken drugs.
It's bizarre, and it's disturbing. If anything.
Yeah.
But to me, apart from and again, there's a whole nother art form there that you could explore to a certain degree. I think if you at least, whether it's writing a script or it is creating a movie based on some kind of AI, generated thing, you just have enhanced by AI, or you have it denotes certain things that are AI generated. So then I, as a viewer, can either, make a judgment as to whether or not that is entertaining, or if it's like, okay, they went too far here and they probably should have like that. To me is the only thing is I just want to know.
Yeah.
And
I'm saying, like, you go see a film and at the end of it, the scroll pops up and it says, written by ChatGPT or something like that.
I'm sure,
would you think you'd ever see something
Georgia,
like that?
like the Georgia Peach. Yeah, I'm sure at the end of the credits they might be like, oh, attribute like this AI was used in the making of this film. I'm sure
like cameras being used, just like
you'll have the
equipment.
AI logo in the credits. Yeah.
And it's crazy though, because to me, I don't know, it's still very, very tricky. I get why the DGA and SAG and all of these different institutions are at a point in a crossroads of trying to figure this out before it gets too deep into the industry before it is out of control. They're at least, I will say, that's one benefit of having a body as big as all of these different groups within all these different guilds within Hollywood, is there at least are some pressure on trying to iron this out before it just gets out of control. The thing is I still think some of these ways of handling matters is antiquated. I think you're going to have, just like with indie filmmaking, I think you're seeing a rise of indie filmmaking come back to the forefront because you have industry insiders who know the red tape that's involved with getting a production made. And you see them wanting to explore these new avenues and return to some originality, to the point where they don't want to be held down with, oh, well, it's cool you want to go and do your own thing, but nobody from our side is going to work on that because they're contractually obligated to, to not be part of that production because you're not part of this guild, or you're not part of the in crowd and you haven't paid your dues. And it's like, okay, well, now you've just become a bloated institution that is slowly creating your own demise and irrelevance because other things and other forms of technology are just you're not keeping up pace with it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When you have advancements in even graphic technology like NVIDIA, is it not NVIDIA? I forget who does the Unreal. I think it's just Unreal.
Unreal, yeah.
It's
Unity?
Is Unity
no,
Unreal?
Unreal is Unreal.
Unity is its own. It's just Unreal. Unreal is just Unreal.
Yeah.
But you have Unreal Engine 5, which is just they only do these iterations maybe once every 5-10 years. And when they come out with a new engine and it gets ever more, you're seeing individual artists create mind-boggling, mind-blowing things that maybe I don't need to go see a huge Marvel movie with planets crashing into each other and just get a smattering on screen of just schlock, but rather, just a visual feast in that regard, but something a little bit more intimate that still adds CGI flair. I think of movies like Ex Machina that do it so well, and that's not a huge budget film. You have all of these smaller art house films that can now almost somewhat ascertain some of these bigger budget movies, that it's like, okay, fine, every once in a while a blockbuster is nice to go see for a popcorn flick, but when you do a whole slew of them and they're just not entertaining anymore, you return to something that is just as well created but way more personalized. And if anything, I just see it, again, kind of becoming making something that was so defined by Hollywood at a certain time, and it was like, oh, you got to go out to LA, you got to go out to the studios. We've been talking about years about people moving out of Hollywood. People are getting away. Movies aren't made there anymore. Triple R was fantastic. It's not a Hollywood produced film. There's all sorts of film and content out there that is looking to have eyeballs on it. And it doesn't have to necessarily come from Hollywood anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger issue.
Reviewed Sisu, which wasn't. Yeah. It was bought by Hollywood to distribute, but it wasn't made there, produced there.
And again, I think the bigger issue also at hand with all this is just simply the amount of content that there is out there. And it's like, again, writing is still, the written word has been around for how long? And it's like you could still pick up a book written by a person.
About 10 days.
And 10 days. That's
10 days. Yeah.
I know we got to get moving. I've got one more headline to report.
Uh-oh.
We got to talk about it because we've hinted at it on the show, and but Disney is looking to pull even more content. It actually makes a little bit more sense now as to why, and they're doing it for tax reasons.
Yeah.
Because things like Willow that they spent an ungodly amount of money on that flopped and nobody's watching, they can now have a tax write-off to save what I think this, along with like 2 other projects, is going to amount to a $1.5 billion tax loss that they won't be taxed on, so that now they can actually keep from losing more money on it.
How pathetic is that in my mind? Because I'm like, here's a product that you made for people on a streaming service that is owned by you, that the assumption was everything Disney...
That was Chapek's fault.
Yeah, everything Disney was going to be on there. That's why people flocked to it. And now it's like, well, nobody likes these things, and we could just save money with a tax write-off. It's like, but that's, again, that's just like Netflix. This is something you're not doing for consumers. You're doing for yourself, which I get. You're a business. You have to save money. You have to make money. Yeah. But when you get that so bad off that you have to screw over the customers to save yourself, that shows just how badly how poorly mismanaged things have been.
That's what it draws my attention to. $1.5 billion is not a lot of money to Disney.
No.
It is a tens of billions of dollar company. It's huge.
They spent more than that on some of the properties they have. Marvel,
so
Star Wars.
The fact that they're doing this to cut $1.5 billion, whether it's for taxes or tax reasons or not, that means they are on their way to dire straits. If they are having to take, 5 years ago, $1 billion is a penny to Disney. And now they're having to cut here and fire people here. That just shows me that it's a company on a downward spiral.
Oh, no doubt.
And I think it's they can sugarcoat it and say, oh, it's for tax purposes, blah blah blah.
No,
they can say whatever they want.
It's
just an indicator that they're screwing themselves over.
I completely agree. I don't think they're trying to sugarcoat it. I think that to me is not sugarcoating it. It's blatantly saying these were flops.
Yeah.
They're failures. We're going to take the loss on it because that's going to save us money from keeping it on our streaming service. Obviously not enough people tuned into it, so which it's funny because all of this I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, maybe again Iger was kind of brought back in to lick their wounds and say, okay, we got some restructuring to do because this went downhill and downhill fast, and it's not turning a profit like we wanted to. We're going to set this on a course to where he mentions in the statement, that he thinks now Disney Plus is going to be a profitable part of the company in the future ahead. But it's funny too because then they announced Hocus Pocus 3 is going to be starting production, and I'm like, you can't tell. I know Hocus Pocus 2.
It's supposed to be out for Halloween this year.
What? No,
I thought I thought over there, Brian was talking about how it was supposed to be this Halloween.
No.
They just announced that they were going in production.
Okay,
I don't think they even have a script
so it's
written.
Probably next year.
But even still, I'm just like, other than the
initial.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Midler will be dead by then. So.
Well, I just think there's not enough makeup to make Sarah Jessica Parker look that good again.
Yeah.
She didn't in this one either, but
not her face.
No, not her. Well, that's mainly what
I don't look at her face in these movies.
She's in a dress the rest of the movie.
She's in
a very plush kind of dress.
She's in a push-up dress.
I like her better in the original. But ultimately, other than the initial boost because of it coming back from a old cult classic IP, I think it's a bad step. I'm like, you're not reading the tea leaves. Here you are admitting that these things were flops, and now it's like you're going to immediately try to jump on the success of something that was a literally 2 decades in the making, 3 decades in the making, simply because of the fact that it was like, oh, we want to return this and people have been clamoring for it. We know this will get real quick subscriptions. But I'm like, you can't tell me that was popular enough amongst people that they were like, oh, we need a third one. We absolutely got to have a third one.
Everybody I know that watched it was just like, you threw in LGB, drag queens, and trans kids.
Yep.
And I'm not going to watch it, and I'm not going to let my family watch it. Yeah. And I know a church full of people that were just like, the grown-ups watched it one night and we're like, yeah, we're not letting our kids watch that. And it's like, but you're gonna double down on it and make a third one.
Well, think about it. That to me has been the biggest misstep of Iger in general, because look at Little Mermaid. It's like how they really truly believe as long as they push something in your face constantly and just badger you over the head with it, you're gonna
grow on you.
I just read an article today that was talking about the lukewarm critical response to Elemental that's coming out, and they're like, they believe that Pixar's lost its magic. It's like, they've lost it a long time ago.
Yeah. About the time they booted John Lasseter.
That's exactly right. And you think you can get rid again? I'm not worried about AI to that extent, because look at what happened. Mm-hmm. And you didn't even have to replace these people with AI. You replaced a genius like John Lasseter over some stupid, silly allegations for the fact that you brought in and thinking, oh, this is going to be fine. Pixar's built, enough on strong foundation that it can continue on in the future. No, they turned out nothing memorable like their first 2 decades.
In fact, I think he was the head on Toy Story 4 before he got booted, and we see how that movie turned out without him, and then everything since then has been, I think, downhill. No, I agree with that completely. I think until we get to a point where, again, we need to focus on the talent and making the best possible movie, Disney's, because they say that. They keep saying, we're focusing on quality now, not quantity. But then, like you said, they announced Hocus Pocus 3, or they pushing out all these other things. I was reading a thing today where they were talking about they fired the director and one of the producers of Lightyear because they're cleaning house, and anything that was a flop, they're firing the people attached to it. And it's like, okay, but are you you're not firing them for the right reasons? It's like, I don't care that the people who worked on Lightyear are gone because it was a bad movie, but you're firing them because it didn't make money, not because of the things they shoved into it.
You're gonna replace them with people who have the same ideology.
They're going to do the exactly. You're going to replace them with people that are going to do the exact same thing. Yep. So it's like, okay, whatever. Like, you're not actually changing.
It's the classic passing the buck. Yeah. And it's like, until Iger admits they need to change course and they need to change fast, they're going to continue to bleed money. And I think, Sean, you're right. It's like, these are clear indications of signs of trouble, not brighter days are ahead. It's like, no.
They're raising prices too. It says that in the article.
Yeah.
So you're cutting content and you're raising the prices. What does that say? That says your viewers don't matter at all.
Nope.
Yep. I was actually reading that there might be a price hike on a lot of streaming services if Netflix is, which I believe.
We said it. You said it last week.
I think something like Amazon's probably safe because their bread and butter is with all the shipping and stuff like that. And
it's more than just
But when you have the ones like Paramount, Max, Disney, the ones that like all they offer is that. I mean, Disney offers other things, but as far as the profitability of their streaming service, it's like I could see them all starting to hike prices. And here's the thing, when every streaming service is around $5 to $10, you could get every streaming service for about $70, and it's still cheaper than cable. When they're all $15 or $20, it's like that's impossible. Now you're spending way more than cable ever was.
Now you're making people pick and choose over what they want to watch, and that, to me, that's a slippery slope because...
Well, I was going to say, you're going to learn real quick what people are willing to support with their money and pay for in terms of... Because that's the other problem. Like I just mentioned...
If it's between Disney and Netflix, I'm picking Netflix.
Well, here's my problem.
I hate to say it, but...
Even then, it comes down to, for me, I don't care what you're offering exclusively on your service, because if you put out The Mandalorian Season 3 and the other
and
3...
it's laughable compared to the first two.
Exactly, and the other 3 Star Wars, and it's like, okay, all I'm getting are Star Wars series. It's like, where's the variety? And I mean, I will say, that's at least where Netflix has... But they have a problem too, because that's where they have to make up the most. They don't have the back catalog like these other places do. Yeah. At least if you go with Paramount or Peacock or something, you could say, okay, these are established libraries. That is why Disney does have, they've got 100-year history. It's like they have a lot there to already offer people who are, want that, appetizing for that. But it's still an issue of way too much content and not enough time. And when you start charging people, and they've got to really pick and choose. They're gonna go after like, okay, well, I never watched this. I'm just not gonna subscribe, and I'll have to forego that content.
Yeah.
And or again, like we mentioned,
Turn to other thing, not RAR. They're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
But other way.
But I mean, you could easily cancel Disney until the next Star Wars movie comes out, and then you could subscribe for a month and watch it, and then
Yeah.
Yep.
cancel
Well,
it.
I told you that's how I feel about not just because I mean I know you said you would keep Netflix over Disney. I probably would too in that regard.
Well, my thing with Netflix is like, not only can I watch Netflix's newest original movie, which are all somewhat decent, they're not great. Some of them are really good. Some of them have been Academy Award winning movies. So it's like I can watch those. I can also watch my favorite new show on Netflix, and if I want to, I can watch 3 Men and a Baby that was made in 1980.
And they do have
it's
some
all
older
on
stuff.
one place. I don't have to go to 3 different streaming services to watch.
And I get that. For me, I don't ever watch Netflix, so that is one that I'm like, okay, when Stranger Things comes out next year, I could subscribe for that 1 month and I'd be happy.
Yeah, but
I'm not like that with Disney too. There's nothing I watch on Disney, so.
But you're also, Sean, talking about the real hardest part about seeing their original content along with these other like
old movies and stuff like that.
But the
It's
thing
like-
is those are
deals.
those are going to start shrinking up the more, because the moment Max, Peacock, Paramount, all of them start realizing we're charging more, you're going to have people who are like, okay, well, what am I getting? And they're like, well, this is the only place you could see this. And they're not going to be making side deals with Netflix.
Yeah.
Why should Netflix benefit?
Yeah.
We would
that's-
think, but HBO's model right now is to partner with other stream. They're like, well, Max, we don't need everything here, so Amazon's going to get this Batman series. This is going to it's cheaper for us to license out to other streaming services in case nobody watches it.
But again, I think so much of that is, I agree. It's going on now. I'm just thinking when prices start to rise and people see certain things on other services, the whole intention behind trying to get someone to subscribe to yours is that's the only place you can see that.
Yeah.
So if people really want to see these classics or some kind of movie, why would it benefit Max or Warner from putting it on another service? Then they say, well, that's costing us a subscription price. Why don't we just put it on our platform only?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't know why they do it, because right now that is like Discovery's, Warner's like idea, like David Zavslaw's plan is to license things out to other streaming services. But I agree. It's like you would think once, I get why like current deals are still in effect, but once those expire, I would think, yeah, you would want to, of course, like, because that's the thing. Okay, Cartoon Network, this is a great example. Miranda's kids watch a lot of those shows on Hulu. They're owned by Warner Brothers, and they're also on Max. So it's like maybe and granted, I know they have current deals, but if you didn't have those on Hulu, maybe you would drive more subscribers to Max, because
That's
that
my
would be
point. Yep.
Exactly. And I agree. I think that would be the smart thing, but right now they're not doing it. And other than current deals, I don't know why they're still making new deals.
No, right now they're making money off 2 different people. They're making money off Max, and
Hulu's
they're making money off Hulu.
Paying for that.
Yeah.
that
They,
right.
they are, and that's what. But then, okay, why wouldn't they still do that in the future? Then, if they think, well, not enough people are going to subscribe for this,
Yeah.
we'll license it to another
It's just
one.
like the gaming industry. We're worried to death that eventually Call of Duty is not going to be on PlayStation.
I don't even care.
And it's like, I know, but if you're a Call of Duty person like me, like I care. But it's like, it's in Microsoft's best interest to have it on their console and PlayStations, because then they're making twice the amount of money.
No, that's
Like,
true. That's
you're not
why-
going to drive somebody to buy a $500 console
Sony brought-
versus a $60 game.
But then, and Sony made the strategic move of putting MLB The Show on multi-platform.
Yeah.
Because they know it's such a niche market, but it can reach a wider array of
Yeah.
people. However, they're not putting Gran Turismo on there. They're not
yeah.
putting Uncharted on there.
Yeah.
They're not putting Last of Us. They know those are system sellers.
Yeah.
And if you have enough faith in your product, you know that they'll buy systems for those games. And that's, again, that's opening up a whole other can of worms. But I think the deals are going to shore up when you have higher price increases, because all it's going to take for Warner to say the reason why we don't want those on other services is when somebody says, well, I'll cancel my Max because I only care about this show on Hulu. No. You can only get that over here.
Yeah, and
That's
that's my
all
thought
it's going to
process
take.
too, yeah.
That's all it's going to take. And when that starts happening because price increases go up because of what Netflix is doing, and then everybody else starts to do the same, and people start saying, okay, now you're really forcing me to pick and choose which streaming services I get. I'm only going to get 2. I'm not going to have 5.
Yeah.
Well, now it's going to make the streaming services even more competitive about what content they offer.
The password sharing thing screws that all up too. Because
no, that's precisely why
you
Netflix
can't afford
down on
5,
it.
but you can afford 2, and I can afford 2, and Keith can afford 2, and between the 3 of us, we have access to 6 streaming services.
Unless they have the
unless
crackdown.
they crack down on the
Right.
passwords.
And
Yeah.
that's why I think others are going to start doing that as well
Yeah.
if it's successful with Netflix. Alrighty, we got to move on.
Yeah, let's move on to the.
Yeah, because this is a big topic. Let's get into multimedia.
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 All right, we jumped the gun a little bit. We put multimedia this week. We're going to have Vices next week because we had an Apple event, and we were kind of in the loop as far as everybody knew and understood that they were going to probably reveal something big, and it was. The Vision Pro has been announced. So what do we think of Apple's headset? Is it going to be a big, huge Christmas present under our tree for $3,500?
No.
Are you impressed by AR, VR technology that Apple's put out?
I don't know a lot about it yet, but I mean, what I've seen has impressed me some. I haven't watched the keynote to really get into all the specs. I know the price range. I know some of like the pass through and how they talk about like how much better that is than anything on the market right now. Though I know Oculus is also working on having the pass through for AR. We don't know what that'll be like, but I do. It's what to me, it's one of those things that, like you mentioned with the iPhone or even the Apple Watch, I think is a better example because the iPhone was definitely, there were touchscreen phones, there weren't smartphones until iPhone.
Yeah,
True.
But there were smart watches before the Apple Watch, but the Apple Watch, I think, made them mainstream and something that more people were having on a regular basis. And I'm not saying that this can do this for AR or VR, but if it is as above and beyond as Apple has been in the past with new products, it could be the push that people need for it to become more mainstream, though that's also hard by the fact that it's a $3,500 price tag. So
yeah, I think that's the crux for them is the price, because even though it's a premium product like most Apple products are, there was a lot of claims that they made in their presentation about it that they talked about firsts, and this is the first time you'll ever have this experience, and it's not true. Anybody that's owned an Oculus has had an experience like that, and the Oculus that just came out last year, the Pro, is half the price. It's less than half the price. And it does almost all of the same thing, with the exception of the actual clear glass pass-through. I mean, it already has digital pass-through in full color in 4K, but it's not it's not glass that you're peering through like the AR.
Because I haven't used it, but I read that it was very like that the pass-through on the Oculus was very fuzzy. Like it wasn't
the pass-through on the one that I have is fuzzy and it's black and white.
Okay.
Because the cameras are only made for motion tracking; they're not made for color. A year after it came out, Android and Meta or whatever they're called decided, we'll throw in this option to use those cameras to see what's outside of your headset. The new one, the Quest 3, is full color 4K. It actually has more pixel density than the Apple, so even though they're using micro LED, the pixel density is so tight on the Oculus 3, which is going to be $400, that there's no screen door effect. So it's along the same lines as what Apple's creating.
Sounds like that.
And the Oculus Pro is 5K screens in both eyes, which is quite a bit more pixel density than what Apple's offering. So but they've marketed their product that the Oculus Pro is not. You don't buy it for a home experience. It's marketed for commercial, industrial, medical, educational use. It's not a gaming headset.
Well, and it's funny because I actually think that was where Apple landed the best part of the keynote, as they do. And like you said, they're throwing a lot of buzzwords around, and as they always do, of promoting their stuff. And for the most part, they can, because it's backed up when you use the product. I mean, a lot of times
none of us have used it. Yeah.
Right. And I haven't used it, and I will say it's like I'm skeptical, just like I have been on certain product lines. Like I compared it to the Apple Watch. For me, Gen 1 of the Apple Watch was cool novelty. Maybe health fitness. I get it for some people. It was just kind of like a cool little trendy piece of tech. Was not clamoring to have it. I was kind of shocked at how big of a success it was. But then again, I mean, that's what Apple does. They do their market research and they know what people want.
Yeah.
And to me, it was kind of one of those things where all of these points they were making, I wasn't necessarily doubting how amazing it was and how much of a breakthrough it was. One thing right away that I thought was awesome was just the fact that it is the headset with the eye tracking and the touch just the finger tapping.
Yeah.
I think that if done right without having hand controls is monumental. I think that's huge. And I think the way they pushed it in terms of, like you were saying, the areas of focus and expertise, even from just the practical of here's how you can use it in a productive work sense, but here's how you can use it in an entertainment aspect too, or even in an emotional aspect of seeing. I think it is a little bizarre, like walking around, big headset on.
That was, I mean, like a fool wearing that.
No, trust me, I thought the same thing.
The guy on the plane, I was like, "Are you serious?"
But actually, that's the one area where I was like, I could maybe see somebody putting it on, not because I think it looks good, but because it would be the one area where you'd want to tune everything out.
You could watch a movie or something on the phone.
Right.
I get that, but
And
I'd
be
also
immersed.
like Sean. I'd be like, feel like a stupid sitting here doing.
Would you like nuts? And you're like, no thanks, I'm good. I'm
You're
good.
sitting here like pinching things on screen, and
Right.
The people are sitting next to you like, what is this
Which,
guy?
by the way, my $200 Oculus Quest 2 is completely hands-free other than gaming. You only need the controllers if you're playing games. The Quest 3 has eye tracking. The Oculus Pro has eye tracking. It's got 12 cameras just like the Apple. It's got internal cameras that track your eye movement and all that stuff. It's nothing
here's
new.
the thing.
It might be better, but it's not new.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
We've known this in terms of the Apple treatment, and it's kind of like what you were saying about the smartphone thing. It's like I haven't used the Oculus. I haven't used your Quest 2. I don't think.
I don't know.
But I haven't used.
Think about Android though. Android's been ahead in software or in mobile operating system.
Oh yeah.
Their phones can do things Apple hasn't dreamed of doing, but the things that Apple does do, it does better than Android.
Exactly.
So that's where
I mean that's the problem is, and it was funny because they kind of did this also with one earlier part in their keynote where they added profiles to Safari, and I was like, Google Chrome, like for 10 years.
Yeah, right.
But it's funny because it's like, and they gloss over times where they add features that people have clamored for. The multiple timers. I mean, they even make a joke about it.
Wow, in this day and age, who would have thought? And I'm like, yeah, that should have been there day one.
And so definitely there are times where Apple, they overlook the simplest things that people really want that can make the night. But like you said, there's still features that they do in such a way that are only done by Apple.
Yeah.
That just are like, holy crap. I mean, this is just a breakthrough.
Yeah.
But I also think in terms of their ecosystem, this is where they've been miles ahead of other competition, is like they were even saying, the fact that you could eventually look at an iMac and if it sees and notices that you have, it connects to your goggles and it's like, okay, now you have a second screen. Like I said, I'm not a day one. I'm not a first iteration. But if there's app developers and there's ways in which they intuitively create controls that make certain feature sets, worthwhile and a breakthrough for video editing or viewing certain projects or doing certain things, then absolutely I could be a second or third or fourth generation buy. And again, $3,500 is definitely expensive.
Yeah.
But if you're equating it to something that one is going to be bought over long periods of time, meaning this is not I'm up.
You're not updating it every year.
I'm not updating, but it's still weird. But it's like I've had my iPhone 11 since it came out, so it's been three going on 4 years old.
They're on the 14
I'm
now.
looking to buy this year's latest and greatest, and I've already decided because I kept this one so long, I'm going to buy the highest end model. And I know that based on, they usually knock off $100 from the previous years and stick the new one at the current price. So it's going to be a $1,500 phone. $1,500.
That's how much my 14 Max was.
So that right there.
But it should last you another 3 to 4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you're paying $3,500 or even my PC, my editing PC, that's $5,000. It was like that was meant to be a 10-year purchase.
Sure.
That's meant to last me a certain amount of time. If I'm investing in this as a productivity tool, no, this is not, I want to watch my kids and make 3D videos of them.
That's right.
No, it's
they call
not,
it Pro for a reason.
It's very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And I thought that marketing was smart. The fact that they didn't just say, oh, there's a Vision. They immediately came out and said Vision Pro.
I think they'll have.
They're marketing this for enthusiasts.
I think they'll have a cheaper one. I think the
no
Vision
doubt.
Pro
Eventually,
is titled that way. Eventually, they'll have the Apple Vision,
Yep.
and it will be cheaper. It will be more consumer. And
they'll do a plastic version,
and it'll sell better.
It's like the SE versions of the watches and the phones. It's like, oh, here's a more
Mac Rumors had an article just a couple of weeks ago talking about the fact that looking forward to the AR VR goggles coming out, and they were talking about the price point, saying that it was going to be $3,000 plus. That's what they were looking at. And one of the things in the article that they were talking about was, let's look at Apple's best-selling products to see what it is that people want. On the Apple Watch, the SE outsold the 8 when they came out, or outsold the model that came out alongside it. The iPhone 14 outsells the 14 Pro and the Pro Max. The iPhone SE outsells the iPhone 14. So in the Apple Watch, or the MacBooks are the same way. The best-selling MacBook is the entry-level MacBook Pro, which used to be $12.99. I think now it's more. I think it's like $17.99 or something now.
Actually, no, I think it's cheaper.
Well,
because
for the bigger
silicon.
screen. Yeah, for the 13-inch, I think you can get one for around $1,200.
Yeah,
but
think
for
so.
the 16-inch, which is most people buy the bigger screen. So they were saying that on the MacBook Pro side, the cheapest one is the one that people buy. They don't buy the $2,500 one; they buy the entry level. So they're saying that, you know, if Apple comes out with this headset and it's automatically a Pro model and it's automatically $3,500. It's going to be bought by the uber rich, and it's going to be bought by schools and hospitals and drafting firms, architects. That's who's going to buy it. People aren't going to buy it to sit at home and watch a 3D movie, which you can do on the Oculus.
See, it's weird because I agree and I disagree.
As soon as they come out with a cheaper one, they're going to buy the cheaper one.
Because here, no, I agree. Well, I think it's just going to expand the market. I mean, this is where Apple is genius in terms of, I mean, this is what Tim Cook was, I think, reason why he was made CEO from Steve Jobs. I mean, he was part of it along the Steve Jobs trail, but what he's a master at is, and this is what Apple is just so good at in general, they learn the market that they're going after, and they're very intentional about who they market it towards, and they attack that market and are relentless about it and get all of the checkpoints up. And the moment, I think they already said that they're estimating 900,000 units being sold in the first year. Yeah. That's incredible. That's insane for an entry level on that price point, only for it to be a runaway success. I mean, the fact that they're putting it out there for developers to get in entry level, but it's already going to be compatible with 100,000 apps day one that are already there, just even being used in a 2D form factor, but in a 3D landscape or whatever. I mean, interactive in a different way. I agree. It's going to be enthusiasts, but it's going to penetrate the market in such a way that the Quest or other headsets have not been able to, simply because it's the Apple brand. And they knew that.
That's true.
But I also think Apple is just very good about pinpointing, okay, well, if we want to approach it from this point, but we also know that this is going to check the boxes of maybe these others who are interested, they may splurge just to be on that enthusiast. I think about when they first did the Apple Watch and they had the Apple Watch Edition. It took them one generation to get rid of a $10,000 gold Apple Watch.
Yeah,
how ridiculous it was.
Yeah.
And if you use the first gen, the Series 0 Apple Watch, it was incredibly slow. It was awful.
It was terrible.
And I remember not being sold on it till the third generation.
Yeah.
But even then, I remember it was like the first Apple Watch was still like $300, and I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. But yet they came out with cellular 2 years later, and I was on board. I was like, I'll buy the $400 bigger one.
The 3 was a great advancement, and then the 6, which is what I have now, I thought was a nice advancement, and I don't feel like they've really advanced the watch much since then.
No, and
I mean, they've added features,
but here's the thing.
sure, but
They know that once they have the market unlocked, and they know that then after you've made the monumental leaps in the first few generations, it's smaller iterations that now all they have to do is, it's just like with the Ultra. It's like, I'll never get an Apple Watch Ultra, but they're going after a more enthusiast fitness crowd of, hey, it may not be the world's best diving watch. They're definitely not going to capture that. But if you're an enthusiast diver who's not going to do it professionally, you don't need to go out and buy the equivalent of what Garmin is putting out.
You don't have to have a Garmin and an Apple Watch.
Right.
You can get an Apple Watch Ultra and have both.
And, of course, your serious divers or serious,
aren't going to touch it.
They're going to go after the
Yeah.
pros who make the equipment in the first place. But if Apple Watch can capture that market of, think about AirPods are not the best wireless headphone on the market, not by a long shot. They suck half the time. They don't connect the way they're supposed to. It doesn't work like magic. But at the same time, it's $1 billion industry, just the AirPods.
Yeah.
And it puts others to shame simply because not only the Apple brand, but they do one thing really well within their ecosystem, and most people say, I want those. And it becomes a status symbol.
Yeah.
You see people in interviews wearing them
white,
in their head.
yeah.
And it's like you immediately know what it is. They're very good about getting into a certain kind of niche, but in so many different areas of certain markets that it then catches like wildfire and everybody wants one.
They make you think you need it.
Yes.
And that's I can see them doing that with the Vision Pro.
I mean, here's the thing. Even regardless of whether or not you pick Team Quest or Team Vision Pro or what Hive or whatever it is, to me, Apple getting into the game is immediately going to boost the sales of everybody else.
Oh, it's going to force them to step things up too.
To step things up, to innovate, and also say, there's going to be some serious dough here. Because now we're not only competing in terms of putting our app on this market, we're going to make it available because we want it on as many platforms as possible. Well, that's going to immediately get people who can't get the rich $3,500 Vision Pro. They're going to go buy a Quest or a
I'm
Quest
go buy
Pro.
a PSVR too.
That was one of the things, honestly, during that presentation that worried me. As soon as they showed it on a guy's head and I saw the cord, I was like, if it has a cord, forget about
saw
it.
that image too,
Nobody's
and
going to want it. And then when I found out that it was a cord to a battery pack, I was like, that's okay.
Yes.
That takes it to a whole nother level.
As like I said, I didn't watch the thing, but I have read several. And the first image I saw in one of the articles I was reading when I saw the cord is like, what is that? And then when I read it was the battery pack, I was like, okay,
Agreed.
That's fine. Yeah.
And that was another thing that I completely agree. I was turned off, and then when I realized, because that's something that I immediately think, that's going to improve down the road exponentially.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have it to where that headset, probably second gen, is going to be 5 hours without a battery pack.
The
And then 15
Oculus
hours.
is 2.5 hours without a battery pack, and with a battery pack, it's 10 to 12. And they sell their own battery pack. And of course, I mean, you can put it in your pocket, or they have it to where it mounts on the back of your head to balance out the weight of the headset. And I'm sure Apple will come up. I guarantee you, at launch, they already mentioned they're going to have multiple straps that you're going to be able to use.
Yep.
But I guarantee you they'll have one with an attachment to put that back there.
Right.
Because it does offset and makes it more
I've heard
comfortable.
it's pretty heavy already. I can't imagine strapping
Glass
something
And
and
that's
metal?
the
Yeah.
fact that it's laminated glass is going to make it heavy, which I think that's another area where your Oculus people understand that ever since the Quest 2 and the Quest 3 is going to be smaller and lighter, and mine's already small and light compared to the first one. I think they're more comfortable. I think they're going to be better for kids, and I think it's going to be the one you find in 90% of people's homes that have VR. But I agree. Like, the one thing that Oculus just simply cannot do that I think Apple advertised, and I think it will work like it's supposed to, or at least somewhat, is the integration with all of their other stuff. And that's the thing, is like, if you want to do virtual desktop on an Oculus, you have to have the virtual desktop app. That's $20 that you got to pay. That's written by a different company than Meta or Facebook or Oculus. I get confused on who's who anymore because they've changed their name 3 times.
Right.
But you got to buy that app. That app has to wirelessly connect to your computer. So there's not an actual desktop computer in the headset,
Right.
which is one of the things that really blew me away about the Apple was that it's an M2 computer in the headset.
They
It
have their
doesn't
own
need your
chip.
MacBook. Yeah.
The fact that they have its own chip that's going to be 12 milliseconds latency as far as all of its cameras and sensors.
Yeah, and I don't know how that compares.
That's my only question.
The Oculus uses a Snapdragon right now, but they are making their own chip for that or whatever, and then they have a secondary chip that processes the camera stuff, but it's not an M2.
Another thing aside too that I was a little bit intrigued by, and I was happy to hear, again, and you can always take it with a grain of salt depending on how much you trust these companies. But when they did say that any eye tracking in terms of web browsing and all of this, they said all of it is done on the device. There's a separate screen that actually stops any kind of web browser. And I assume it's going to be Safari built in, but others will have to adhere to the protocols or otherwise they won't be let onto the store. But there's a certain separate screen that keeps any kind of eye tracking from being used to track your own movements on a web page, such that it's on device that it processes it and it doesn't relay like any kind of advertising or tracking device.
Yeah, they said Apple doesn't even know.
Right.
Like
and that to me is, again, anytime
That's
they
so
do
that people can watch porn in peace, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the funny thing about it is I'm like, anytime they are very specific about how they're trying to keep it secure, because that's always in question when you start opening up these things to being more integrated into your life and much more personalized.
It's like, what other thing are you going to let China spy on us with? Gosh.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, right now the Facebook they'll throw up advertisements on your Facebook page of things that your Oculus has seen in your living room.
Well, see, and when you told me that you had to have a Facebook profile to use it,
not anymore.
You don't anymore.
But they changed that. But yeah, you used to have to do. They listened.
That was always
and they
good.
walked it back. Yeah,
good, because
now you have to have a Meta account. You don't have to have a Facebook account. So you have to,
and we know how good
you connect your Facebook and your Oculus to Meta, but your Meta account is like an overall account.
The only thing that scares me there is
you'll have to have an Apple ID to log into.
But Apple sells products that they make money off of.
Yeah.
Facebook and Meta sell advertisements and identity to make money off of.
Yeah. Well, that's how they can make a $1,000 device $300 or $400.
True.
Is by advertising.
Right. And that's a little bit where it's, and again, for some people that price and that barrier to entry is worth it.
Yeah.
For me, if I have, again, it would probably be the whole package of the ecosystem mixed with the privacy that I would be like, okay, I'd be more willing to give that a try. Again, I'm not buying this day one.
Yeah.
I could care less, honestly, at this point about anything VR or AR. I don't want something on my head. I think you look goofy. My biggest thing would be the form factor of how long can I wear this and actually be productive before I'm like, can I take this thing off? It's obstructing. It's not really
you lose
enhancing.
yourself in it. That's my biggest issue is you can literally lose yourself in it.
And that's the other thing.
But you do it in the privacy of your own home. Dude, it's the only time I ever put the thing on is when I'm alone in my basement or if me and my kids are
watching
playing
that porn.
Yeah, watching the porn. The VR stuff.
To me,
I'm not going to wear it out in public like the Apple thing is
when
expecting people to
technology gets
do.
so advanced that you can just put on an AR, VR thing that's nothing but glasses, like the Google Glasses thing was
Amazon
going to be, but
has AR
terrible.
glasses that are your prescription.
But it's not. I mean, AR, but it's not also integrated.
No. It's AR. Yeah.
When you could throw something on like this, like Google Glasses tried to be, and you still have the full AR, VR experience, then I'll be really impressed.
Yeah.
And I mean,
this is just a stepping stone.
Oh, I know.
It is.
I know.
It is. And that's why I said, like, I'm definitely intrigued. I think with Apple getting into the game, I'm a little bit more interested to see what this market holds. I still don't think. I mean, 900,000 is a lot of units. But it would have to be something that is a huge productivity booster for specific things that I would personally, because again, you still have to be in the ecosystem to not drop. Because the thing is, if you did drop $100 or several $100s on a new PC that can run a VR headset and a VR headset that's attached to it and something that can even withstand the usage of it, I mean, you're talking about already multiple thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And to say that is one device that has its own integrated computer that is this advanced, again, my interest is peaked, but I'm definitely not sold on it. I'm nowhere near like, oh, I'm buying one. Absolutely.
But that being said, if you couldn't edit movies on it or couldn't even do anything production-wise, if it was $1,000, you're telling me you wouldn't buy one?
I mean,
not day one, but like soon after. You saw some reviews.
Like I said, I'd have to. Again, I'd have to use it.
Yeah.
To see but I really would have to have a practical application. I mean, like the Apple Watch, I very rarely update until it becomes slow and unusable, mainly because I think they do throttle it with each OS update.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's like for me, I I think I mentioned in the text, there's a lot of things it can do that I don't even use it for, but I primarily just use it to track my fitness and my health now.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's mainly and to get certain notifications.
Yeah.
It's very convenient for. And it's funny because it's like I really need one or two real productive reasons to expend that kind of money on something that otherwise I would consider to be enthusiast. I don't consider the entertainment aspect of even watching something widescreen or making it look like I'm in a theater. That to me is still not as enjoyable as going to a theater and sitting in a room full of people and enjoying that experience, or even as like the share play aspect of it, or like it would be kind of cool to do Teams meetings or something on it. But ultimately, it's like I'm not using that to communicate.
They're cool features, but is that something you're going to use on a daily basis?
No.
Because I'll admit, I use my watch on a daily basis. I use my iPad on a daily basis. I use my iPhone on a daily basis.
Hell, the iPad is a perfect example. That was a device that for the longest time, I had no reason for it.
Yeah.
It still is something that is not for me, it's not a daily driver. I don't need one.
I don't need it, but I do use it.
But there are things that every once in a while I immediately go to my iPad for that I don't go to my phone for, because it's just the convenience of a bigger screen, having the pencil to jot down notes. That for the longest time they were absolutely not going to support a pencil for the iPad.
You don't need a stylus when you have these.
You're right.
Jobs.
But that's the thing. Like for me, it's going to become one or two reasons, and like you said. That price point ticking down, absolutely. I could see
at
myself
$1,000 price
owning
point,
one.
I'd buy it for a toy. No, I mean not like I'm not just going to be like, here's $1,000 because I don't have $1,000. But that's going to be one of those things. I'm going to save my money. I'm going to put Christmas money, and I would get it to play with, and that's it. I don't need it for productivity. For $3,500, it better be something I wear to work. I mean, it better be something that
if it literally was something
everything.
that I could put on and I immediately have 4 or 5 different screens and I can be productive with it. Or even like they showed, I can move this screen over here with a simple, swipe, and then I'm typing on an actual keyboard. And I'm actually using it as if I've got multiple monitors. That would be invaluable.
Yeah,
it would be very
biggest
invaluable.
point with that is that I think price point drives whether people think they need it or not. $3,500, a lot of people are going to think I don't need that.
Oh, absolutely.
At $1,000 or $699, a lot of people are going to think, dude, I need one of those.
Right.
And they may never pick the damn thing up. There's people who spend $500 on a PlayStation that play their Xbox and don't play it.
That's true.
But they thought they needed it at that price point. If it was $2,000, they'd be like, nah, I got an Xbox.
Right.
But I think price point is the biggest thing for Apple. If they want to put this in millions of homes and not just 900,000, the price is going to have to come down. It probably will,
no doubt,
with the next iteration of it.
Yeah.
And that's I hate that.
I do and I don't. I know that's what they're doing, and because that's what they've done with their last several product lines. And they always come out with the enthusiast pricing of new age tech. And then the original iPhone. And look at it, didn't even have an app store. And it was $500, $600 premium price. And it's like $600 for I think it was 8 gigabytes. And it was $500 for 4 gigabytes.
But it was beautiful though.
It was
my favorite
beautiful.
phone.
But that's the thing. It was a novelty. It was something that you'd never seen, never used before.
I think it was more than that. It was the way of the future.
The way of the future.
The way of the future.
All right, we got to go. We're done. 2 hours. This is our longest podcast ever.
This is probably,
we have not done this since the beginning of our shows.
Our first
podcast.
episode is the longest episode ever.
So we got to wrap this up quick. All righty, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Right there at the bottom of your screen is all of our social media. You can like, share, subscribe. Follow us on Red Moon Book at Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on Twitter, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and, of course, Red Moon Productions on YouTube. And search for us on Rumble, too. We're over there. As always, that old-fashioned way of contacting us is our email, which, Keith, you know what that is best.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Thank you all so much. Transformers is next week. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And he had to get it in there.
2 hours and it wasn't in there.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.